All right, let's get to Tom Connell, the man who, as I say, I cannot blow enough smoke and I cannot pump his tyres up hard enough. In fact, I think his tyres should be so big that they could go onto one of those mining trucks that we saw in Kalgoorlie last week. Tom Connell, he's a mate, he's a colleague, and he has been kicking ass this election. Mate, I know you don't love the public praise, but congratulations on the night, mate.
Very generous. I mean, I bumped into a couple of people at the hotel and they said, "Oh, are you Tom?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Do you know Paul Murray?" So, we all know really where the Sky News fans sit out there.
It's all a family. We love you. We love you. OK, let's get through some stuff. Latest count. Now, obviously, Labor, there's still plenty on the table for them to push a little bit higher. What did Sunday do? Because we've got to give credit to the Electoral Commission. They actually did have a look into some postal voting today, and that's tightened a couple of races, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Let's go through the tally first of all and where we're at. So this is pre-election, Labor 78. I want to draw some attention to here. Greens 4, Independent 4, Climate 200 6. So when we go right now to the current count, Labor 87.
Wow.
Petrie's the other one that's fallen today with some certainty. Coalition 38. Look, I think they're going to win probably 3 or 4 more depending on how things go. Look over here at the moment, the Greens still on 0 confirmed. I think they will win 2 at least at this stage, but nothing is actually confirmed. The other independent there, Tally, Andrew G is set to win Clare. We're just seeing who might finish 2nd or 3rd. And that's the other interesting story, I think, about this. How many contests are turning into tight ones where we might see an independent of some flavour finishing top 2. So Goldstein right now, and I'll go to that in a moment, you can see Climate 200 ahead in that. Monash could be an independent in 2nd. Bean is an independent in 2nd. Bean in Canberra, Paul, that's the margin that Labor has there. We go to the next page. The next 2 are Liberal-Labor contests, but Bradfield is obviously a Climate 200 contest. Flinders could end up being Climate 200 2nd. Menzies is a mess and could have an independent. And Fremantle, Kate Hewlett running very close there as well. The next page I mentioned as well, Andrew Clare, an independent. So this could be the other part of the story. The next election, when we get that pendulum, there's going to be a whole chunk. We'll see how big the crossbench is. I think it will be a similar size, maybe even a little bit bigger or a similar size to that 16. But there'll be another whole number of seats where they'll be in the 2 candidate preferred if they run again next time around. So I think that's something really worth thinking about as we think about how much our sort of electoral system and so on has been upended. I wanted to go here. Well, here I am already at Goldstein. I wanted to tell you why Goldstein has changed today. Essentially, Zoe Daniel thought she'd won last night. This is the margin right now. At this stage, we don't worry about match, swing and so on. We go who's leading, how many votes. Zoe Daniel is at the moment about 90 votes ahead of Tim Wilson. The problem for her is the postal votes that are coming in right now. So here are the postal votes. This is what's come in so far. About 10,000 have come in, 2-party preferred. Again, don't worry about the swing. There's a 3,000 vote difference to Tim Wilson's advantage on the postals. There will be about 20,000 postal votes, 27,000 applications were issued. We apply a rough formality rate, not to bore your viewers, but there'll be about another 10,000. So basically, he'll go 3,000 ahead. Last time around, Zoe Daniel, on the rest of the vote to come, that's absent, declaration, pre-poll and provisional, only won by about 600. So I'm just going to look at one more booth to make sure it's still flowing that way. But I don't see a way back right now, actually, for Zoe Daniel. So just a little bit hesitant because of the way pre-poll and postal's gone in this election, and they can be a bit deceptive early. But it looks like he'll clearly get in front, and Zoe Daniel won't be able to make it back. So we'll just pause and be a little bit wary because it's not going to change the election right now. But it looks like that will be the one Climate 200 seat that will actually fall. The other really interesting one is the seat of Melbourne. So this has been a tricky one because the call by the AEC, they have to pick before there's a single vote who will be the candidates, and they didn't actually initially pick Labor. Well, it is Labor. Now look at this margin right now. Don't get carried away by this margin. It's very early on in this count. In terms of the matched 2PP right now, it's going to be a much closer contest. So right now our system is thinking the projected tally, these are just raw numbers coming in, so it's a bit seat of the pants. The projected tally will have Adam Ban on about 50.5%. In other words, it's far too early. So this is very early on the 2-party preferred, and we just need more votes to come in to have any sort of an idea where that contest has gone. So they're redoing the count, basically.
Can I just quickly ask about the pace of count in Melbourne, where, again, lots of places and lots of tight places. Is it a slightly slower pace that's coming out of that city, and is that because there's a particularly large number of people who might have been in Brisbane for Magic Round?
Yeah, well, when you're somewhere else, you have an absent vote, so that shouldn't affect it. You know, if you go off and you cast an absent vote, that just means the absent bucket is bigger. I have noticed today, and I know some of these pre-poll booths are getting really big in Melbourne, 15,000 and so on. So the issue is the bigger the booth, the longer it is to count. We were waiting for one today, in fact, in Menzies today, Paul, and I thought that there was a possibility that might just get a little bit closer. And it has become today. This was 4% and 5% last night. It's come into 1.8%. But on the current numbers, the postal catch-up, you can see the gap between the two is a little bit less than 3,000, and that's going to be the problem for Keith Wallahan. I just want to see one more batch of postals, because my understanding is he ran a postal, a direct mail campaign this time. He didn't last time. Sometimes late, that means they can break really well. I don't expect they will. I don't think he'll win that, and the problem at the moment is the way those postals are flowing. So think about that gap. 3,000 or so was the gap. You've got 10,000 postals in so far. He has made up, 1,300 votes. So if there's, there it is, 8,000 votes, 1,300 votes. He's gaining, actually, that's quite interesting. So that's a better postal. There's actually more votes here than when I started, Paul, so excuse the stumble.
No, it's how it works. I love it.
That's a bigger catch-up. So I'll go and crunch some more numbers. That's a bigger catch-up than he was getting, because the first 4,000 he caught up about 300. So the next, 4,000 he's caught up more like 1,000. That could get him closer. Look, I still don't. That won't bridge the gap on those current numbers, because there's not a heap of postal in there. That will get quite tight. So that will end up being the total two-party preferred on this seat will end up being something more like 50.5 at this rate. And he needs another sort of increase in postal to be competitive. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, I mean, can I also ask, I've always wanted to do this, can I ask to have a look at the seat of Bradfield? Because, again, you know how there's all the news websites, and then there's the data that you're getting at the AEC, your computer's going to be more powerful than my laptop, right? Apparently that's now under 1,000 votes right now. It's assumed that that is running the Teal way, but again, the pre-poll and postal conversation, if that's at around 1,000, that's interesting. Yeah,
it is. Let's have a look. That's about 1,800 at the moment right now. 80% counted. This is always going to be just a case of what vote is to go. I don't think there'll be pre-poll left. Let's double check. No, that's an EAV. That's hearing assisted, so they tend to be, 50 votes. Postal is the main one left, and absent. Absent can actually trend back towards climate 200, so you want a lead of 500 if you're the Liberal. Okay, so 7,000 in, trending pretty well. 1,400 she's made up so far.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be quite tight. So I'll go and see exactly how many postals. From memory in Bradfield, there would be enough to get Giselle Kaptarian back into the lead, then she needs to hope to hang on when the absent come in, and they'll start to come in tomorrow and Tuesday. There's also funny votes called declaration pre-poll. That's when you vote early, not in your electorate, and provisional when you've got to prove who you are. So this is what these things can get down to later on. Provisional is very small, but absent can be a decent amount of votes, 1,500, 2,000 or so. So you can get a decent lead if they sort of break one way on them.
This is amazing. It's like human Google, human ChatGPT, where I can just ask Tom, and Tom will do the work for us. I love it. All right, because you've had a long time, so I don't want to hold you for too much longer, but can you give us the quick sweep when it comes to the Senate? Because the question there is obviously Labor is going to end up getting in, like in Queensland, they got, remember, one at one election, they'll end up clearly getting two. Victoria, they could end up, maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, give us an idea about, because basically the last spot, so we're looking here at your One Nations, or your Family Firsts, or your Trumpets?
Look, I think the two most relevant things, obviously, who the makeup is, who goes out. One Nation will be an interesting watch. But Labor effectively have 25 to start with out of the ones we know they'll get here. If they can make up 3, they get to 28, and the Greens will get 11. That would mean Labor and the Greens pass legislation by not talking to anyone else. So I think that's probably the most relevant stat, if 100%. You like. So can Labor make up 3? So Queensland. Top line here is how many were up. Bottom line is the quota. So you can already see Labor makes up 1 there. That's simple. 2 to the LNP, 1 to the Greens. One Nation's in a pretty good position to get that position and win it back, courtesy of Malcolm Roberts. New South Wales is interesting. Now, so far on these numbers, if they held, you'd say Labor will make up another one. 2.62 quotas. Liberal Nationals 2, Greens 1, but Labor well ahead of One Nation. But so far, This amount, 37.5%, that's well above what they're getting at a state house level. And the amount of vote in here at the Senate is about 30%. In other words, the vote could actually drop off for Labor, and we're not going to say, oh, you know, this is locked in. If these numbers end up like this, Labor would win one, but if it comes down, then they get into a battle with One Nation would be their problem. Liberal Nationals as well, they're not going to get above 2, obviously. Perrin Davey was third on the ticket, so the Deputy Nationals leader will lose her seat as well. South Australia and Malinowska's power perhaps is powering Labor here, so 2 are up, 2.62. They're a pretty good chance of keeping that, because I think this is more representative of the sort of vote they're going to end up with in South Australia. So 2 will end up Liberal, 1 Green, 2 Labor. I think Labor would get the third at this stage over One Nation. Again, wait to see though, because if that gets a bit closer, if it's 0.45 versus 0.55, you do often get minor parties preferencing and helping out. Yes. So Labor's in a decent position now. We'll see where the vote goes. Tasmania to finish with as well, Paul. Quite interesting. So we're going to see 2 Labor, at least 1 Liberal, at least 1 Green, 2 more up for grabs. Where do they go? Labor could get 1, Liberal could get 1, Greens could get 1, or Jackie Lambie. But in other words, she's not assured right now of returning. I'm waiting for more vote. I'm not calling this right now, but she'd be very vulnerable right there, trying to win off 0.46, given that relatively even spread elsewhere. So that will be a watch. I still think, you know, depending on how things go, she's been a pretty strong force in Tasmanian politics, so she's got that recognition when you get to that preference element, but not a strong position to be in right now. So we'll have to wait. They press a magic button in the Senate in a few weeks when we find out everything, but we will get closer to knowing as we get more count in the next few days.
Tom, that could be the favourite 15 minutes I've done in 15 years. I love that. I love the chat. I really do. Thank you, mate. Congrats again. We'll see you all today, and we'll chat again later in the week. Thank you. Tom Connell. How good is he? How good is he? I'm telling you. The ability to get all that picture, and you're still seeing on the Sunday night what's sort of being counted. Oh, maybe back. Oh, maybe this way. I love it. I love it. We love the numbers of an election.